me for that is Nebraska Congressman Jeff Fortenberry, a member of the House Appropriations Subcommittee on State and Foreign Operations and protector of conscience rights, religious liberty, and moral law. Congressman Fortenberry, always a pleasure to have you here. Not often enough, but thank you for being here today.
Sheila, good afternoon. Thanks so much, as always, for having me on the program. And that was a very powerful introduction that I just heard you give about the absolute essential question. Who is America? What are we as a nation? Where are we going as a people? And I think that narrative is under grave duress, given the dynamics of our modern age, the philosophical divide, the untethering that we've had from the understanding of what the sacrifices that went into building the country, and certain threats from without, which include the possibility of uncontrolled immigration. Immigration is an important key point because it invokes so many emotions, and America is a just and generous nation. We have 1 million people come here basically legally, are admitted to our country every year. We are by far the largest donor of charitable giving worldwide. As you were kind enough to mention, I sit on the Appropriations Committee that controls the funding for State Department and humanitarian outreach, as well as certain foreign security operations. We outstrip every country because it is our impulse to be charitable and giving as a people. We just don't sit around while other people die. And yet this has to be held in balance with the ideals of order so that there is fairness and justice, or you will undermine the ability of the country to be charitable in the first place. So there's a great deal of confusion about this, and it manifests itself so intensely on the border, particularly when you see children who are found by our Border Patrol who are exploited by others, or who are just trying to get here with certain family members to try to improve their life. It's a heart-wrenching ordeal. And there's really three dynamics here that, again, must be held in balance. The first is, again, we have an obligation to charity, to help those in need. Second, there is an obligation of the country to understand its own capacity to be able to absorb people. And third is there's this issue of assimilation of values. You cannot let people in your country who do not share a common value of believing in just governance, the protection of human dignity, and the essential responsibility for oneself and one's family before demanding from the system itself. So all of these dynamics have to be held in balance, and it is a good jumping point to discuss the larger narrative of the nation if you care to go that direction as well.
Oh, I definitely do. And while we're on the topic of people flocking to our borders and flooding over those southern borders, especially to a critical extent, I mean, we've got human trafficking going on, all kinds of really horrible things for people's safety on both sides of the border, and so we really need control of that. It's also out of control, some of the political fighting, and I just can't believe we still have, thanks be to God, excellent fine leaders like you still willing to hold down that office in Congress with so much ugly fighting going on. But that's why you do, I know, Congressman. And so to that point, to get away from the invective and all of that, there's a true crisis at the border. But people come here because they know what America, we can continue that conversation in a moment, stands for and is. But the Senate and the House, trying to get together in a bipartisan way to pass legislation of some sort to at least start to get control of that border. Talk for a moment about the House border bill and what you had to say once that was done.
Well, basically it does two things. It takes care of the children, and it helps stop illegal activity simply by giving Border Patrol the resources that they've already expended. This bill also helps Health and Human Resources, the Department of Health and Human Resources, to care for those children properly. But the problem in Congress with this issue and so many others is it's what I call the tyranny of the urgent. There's a constant response to ongoing crisis with very little space politically because of the divides in the country to work on the longer-term policy solutions. And those policy solutions are in four categories. The first is border security itself. You cannot have a just and orderly and vibrant immigration system when you have chaos at your border. It is unfair to people who are trying to use the law, come here legally, to rebuild their lives, either from political persecution or seeking a better way economically. Second, you have to have interior enforcement. This means going after vigorously big business, particularly who started this problem, but other businesses who exploit poor and vulnerable people in order to drive down wages that takes jobs from Americans and then pushes the social costs into hospitals and schools. That is fundamentally unfair to communities. Third, you have to have a foreign policy response that actually goes upstream, and we've done that for a number of years. It's not at all covered in the media. For instance, the day that President Obama announced that he was going to provide $1 billion to the Northern Triangle countries of El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala, I actually had a dinner meeting that night with all three ambassadors and other Congress members at one of those embassies. And they were so grateful and thankful, and we all said, time out, time out. That's just an announcement of the executive. This has to go through our legislative process. Well, year after year, we've basically given those countries close to $700 million to stop corruption, to rebuild just governance, and to provide the types of economic opportunity that stop people needing to flee for economic migration. Mm-hmm. This has not worked very well, though, and this is why President Trump called a timeout on it and says, what are we getting for our money? Which is only a reasonable thing, but the policy intention is correct. You have to get the immigration debate off the one-yard line, off the Mexican-American border, and move back upstreams and address the conditions that are creating criminality and the need for either economic migration or asylum seeking. That point as well leads us to another point about the reform. The fourth pillar of this is the reform of our own immigration system. We need to modernize our system. There are certain things that are very antiquated. The asylum laws need updating. There are people coaching those who are coming from other places on exactly what to say in order to claim asylum to get in the United States. About 90% of the people who claim asylum, who get a court hearing 5 years later, that's how backlog it is, 5 years later, don't even show up. So in other words, there is a lie going on. And that's abusive to our system, and it takes away the opportunity and possibility for people who are truly, authentically fleeing for their lives from having space in the United States. So again, that's unfair. So it's a very hard issue because you're not dealing with abstractions here. You're dealing with human persons, human lives. And you saw the heart-reaching photo of the man who drowned with his child trying to get across. Nobody wants to see that. Nobody wants to see the conditions that are compelling somebody like that to try to find a better way. And that does speak to the greatness of America. But it is held in balance with the need to be orderly, or you're crowding out the opportunity for the country to continue to be generous. And you push cost into communities, which is not fair. And that's what's going on here. Unfortunately, Congress cannot seem to come around the larger, broader solution that would touch all four of those points I just made: border security, interior enforcement, foreign policy considerations, and an updating of our own immigration laws. If we would do that, the problem would begin to cease. People would be empowered to stay where they are. The normalcy of exchange would take place, and we would truly be empowered to have, again, a just and vibrant immigration system that invites people here to rebuild their lives or to embrace that deeper sense of what America means. And if we have time in the program, let's go to that point. What does America mean anymore?
Yeah, let's do.
I'm not here to editorialize. You ask me whatever questions you need.
I want you to answer that.
Well, I'll tell you what America means. You've probably had this experience yourself, Sheila, when you've been overseas. And it happened to me, and it's happened to me several times, particularly when you've been in harsh places or you've been very, very remote from what we know as our daily life here. And all of a sudden, you see an American flag, and your heart jumps. Your anticipation leaps. You are retethered to that which you know, to where you feel safe, to where you feel connected, to where you feel loved. In other words, this country has created both the conditions for stability and order, and has taken away, for the most part, vulnerability by just governance, a market-based system that creates individual opportunity, and the protection of what we call the rule of law. It's probably more important to say the compassion of law. Because when you have those things in place, you create the space for individual creativity and entrepreneurship and idealism because it's tethered to the responsibility of the self and the responsibility to one another, both your own family, the smallest form of community, but also the largest form of community, the nation. And that's really who we are, and it's symbolized in that in our beautiful flag. But you sense it, you know it, you feel it, you even taste it when you're removed from it, and you're reminded of it when you see the flag. A long time ago, I actually saw an editorial cartoon. I wish I had saved it. And all these people are protesting, death to America, death to America, death to America. And then in the next frame of the cartoon, it said, immigration visas now open. Everyone drops the sign and rushes into the line. Yeah. So I guess as hard as problematic as our immigration system is at the moment, it does speak to America's greatness, that people seek to come here.
We're talking just about the southern border. They seek to come here in other ways as well. You did address that, Congressman Fortenberry, how unfair it is to the other asylum seekers and other people who have lined up for years and gone through process by process, step by step, all of the requirements to come to America and to get a green card and then to take the naturalization test and so on. Every step you have to take, it's not fair to them. But there are so many people waiting to come here. What you say about the American flag is so true. I haven't been in the harsh spots you have, but I've been in different parts of the world where I know as soon as you see that flag, there, in all of us, and most of us I should say, there is that immediate impulse. It's an emotion, a visceral reaction before you even think about it, that you know what that flag stands for, which was remarkable to me, Congressman, when last evening on the news I saw that story of that. I think he's an RV dealer, and he has different businesses in different places. I think North Carolina, and in all of his places, I think on a very tall, we see these a lot. I see them a lot in Texas along the highways and in other states as well. But in this case, he has a very tall flagpole, and on that, a very, very large American flag. Well, a lot of places do. And in this case, he's being sued to take it down, and he said he will not take it down no matter what. And even if he's ordered to jail, if he doesn't comply, if it comes to that, he would go rather than take that down. He said when the veterans do their annual, I think, motorcycle ride for a charity, they come and circle that flagpole and watch the flag raising of that very large American flag. And he said, almost to a person, they come to tears, and some just break down in tears when that goes up, because that's
Sheila,
how much it means. This was
who is it?
It was
I think you need to name the name. I need you to tell people where this man is. I need you to tell people to go buy RVs from him.
See, this is how I felt. I'm going to look it up. He was
his name. Yeah.
I will. He was on the story last evening, Martha McCallum, and I was going to, you know what I always do, Congressman? When I hear on any station, anywhere, a story done about somebody I really am impressed by, I quick grab a pen and I write that person's name down, their title, whatever I can get on a piece of paper before they disappear, and I think, okay, I'm going after that person to try to get him on the show, because I am so impressed. And I was so impressed with this man's demeanor, his composure, his sense of presence, but his sense of importance, how he is just an instrument to put something out there that means so much to so many people and has for so very long. And there is so much honor and duty and obligation to others, as you said, Congressman, to our families, to our most immediate community, and to the nation at large, our larger community. There is so much of that we diminish, while everyone else, we hope, increases. And so that's what he stood for. I will get that name. It's in North Carolina. I'll get that on the air. Maybe I can have one of my colleagues here look that up for me. But it was on Martha McCallum last evening on the story, and it's an RV dealership in one place, and he owns a couple of other places, one in Florida. This was a particular dealership in that state where the local officials are. He's been sued.
Can I tell you another story?
Yes, please.
Well, that's great. And I think I wouldn't be shy about saying his name, and anybody.
It's Marcus Lemonis.
Well, Marcus Lemonis, he has that
Camping World
business show, Camping World. Huh.
Just now got
Lemonis has that. Okay. Well, look, then I'll say it. Camping World in North Carolina, thank you. Thank you for your stand. By the way, this has been a couple years now. I hope you don't mind me telling you another story.
Oh, please. I love them.
There was a a new Veterans Memorial dedicated in a little town north of where I live, which is in my congressional district. It's called Wahoo, Nebraska, and a wonderful community, a small community of farmers of German and Czech origin primarily. And in this small town, they had about 500 people show up for, again, the dedication of the memorial. Well, this was around the time where the protest movement around the national anthem began to take place, and football players were taking a knee. And I frankly, listen, if you want to protest something, don't denigrate the very country that, and the emblem of the country that gave rise to your ability to protest. Protest it in another way. So I was very disturbed by this, and as are a number of people. But at the same time, I was at this Veterans Memorial, and the choir that sang the national anthem was a blended choir from both the public school and the Catholic school there, Wahoo Public and Wahoo Newman, as it's called. And as it was my turn to speak, and I simply said, did everyone hear that beautiful blending of voices from both the public school and the Catholic school? Magnificent.
Beautiful. That's great.
And while they were singing our anthem, I didn't see any of you take a knee. I didn't see any of you sit on the bench. Mm-hmm. You all stood. Because it's not about us. It's about them. And I pointed to the markers commemorating the veterans who had sacrificed their all. Well, again, I live in German farm country, and people began to stand up and applaud. It almost shocked me. This is a place where people are about work, about keeping a straight eye, and about plowing ahead. And it's not a place filled with a lot of, political emotion necessarily. But people began to stand up and applaud, and it kind of shocked me. So, again, that's what this symbol of America means. And if we just keep tearing it down, what are we doing to ourselves? What will be left? At its core, the ideal of just governance and the nature of our system that allows redress, that allows you public protest, that allows you the right to speech, that allows you freedom of religion, is almost unheard of in the history of the world and is really under assault. And it's up to good people who listen to your show and others, and like the man at Camping World, to say, no, enough's enough. This is my right. I stand for Old Glory. I stand for her deeper meaning. We're not without problems. We're not without past grievances and injustices, but we have the right and responsibility and the space to fix them. That's the beauty of this country.
See, what you just said is the space to fix them. The other thing that my colleague has just let me know is that, you probably know this, but Marcus Lemonis, Camping World, he also is known as the Prophet Guy. It's a reality help
That's
show.
That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, the Prophet.
Yes,
it helps small businesses refine their businesses and their systems. So it helps them build up, right? So that's what we're talking about. Congressman, to your point about making it clear to our coast-to-coast listeners right now, what's going on involving our American flag, it's in the Wall Street Journal, the other one on Nike and the Nike shoes. You probably know this. A lot of you probably heard this, and maybe a lot of you didn't. But Arizona's governor said he was withdrawing financial incentives. Now that we're on this topic, I just have to throw this out there, that he had promised Nike, the sneaker giant, to open a plant there in Arizona because Nike decided to cancel a shoe with the American flag on the back of it. Why did they do that? Because of pressure from NFL turned activist Colin Kaepernick. And he said this. He told Nike that it shouldn't sell a shoe with a symbol that he and others consider offensive, Congressman, according to people who are familiar with that matter. Consider offensive the American flag. Nike, under that pressure from that activist and maybe others, pulled that. And it just incensed the Arizona governor and other citizens. This is where we are in this divided nation, and we got to unite again.
So remember what's at stake here. So I commend Arizona's governor. Good for that person. What the Arizona law is doing, remember, is taking money from people who have worked for it and giving it to a multinational corporation as a business incentive to locate there. There is no obligation that state has to continue to give money to a corporation that's going to spit in the face of the various people who work hard and pay taxes. That's the bottom line here. Good for the Arizona governor.
It's Arizona Governor Doug Ducey, a Republican. He said, words cannot express my disappointment at this terrible decision by Nike. He said, I am embarrassed for Nike. He's also withdrawing that incentive, as you say. So, Congressman, this all comes from our talking about how the divisions in this country are not only lamentable, they're unnecessary and they're most unfortunate. And when you gave us this very important rundown from Congress, wonderful report, I'm going to make sure that people are aware of this audio archive afterwards. But when you talk about our obligation to charity, our ability to understand our capacity here, with our southern border crisis, and the assimilation of values that have to happen, and then you take us into the tyranny of the urgent. Oh my gosh, is that ever the case right now? The tyranny of the urgent. And so then, if you just tuned in a little bit late, Congressman Jeff Fortenberry then broke it down for us, right? He's so good at this, right off the top of his head. Four things. Border security. We can't have chaos at the border. 2, interior enforcement. We have to have that. Listen to the podcast of this afterwards. Foreign policy response. And he laid that down, taking it back upstream to where the problems begin in other countries. Important point there. And then he wraps it up with the 4th point, being to update our immigration laws, which then we segued straight into why are people coming here? Because America is great. And it remains great because of her people. And Congressman, it's your great state of Nebraska, where I posted an article online the other day when these wonderful farmers came out to an auction and all remained silent to allow a young man to buy back his family farm that had been sold out from under them. I thought that was the most amazing story of what America is about. I'll send you that.
Wow. That's the character of the people I represent, by the way. You're bringing tears to my eyes.
Amen. I'm going to send you a link to that article. It's a fine article. I posted it online. I'm proud of these people. They are great Nebraskans, great Americans. Congressman, time went too fast, but you brought us so much. And happy Independence Day to you, Congressman Jeff Fortenberry. You represent all that is great about America.
Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you so much. See, folks, don't be downhearted. Don't be worried. Don't be afraid. Be part of the solution.